Hello, everybody. So today I wanted to talk about Figma. Um, in my day job over the last couple of years, I've had the pleasure of working extensively in Figma and getting to know it very well. And I'm pretty excited about it. It's kind of like XD, but super powered, and really the tool that was missing to bridge the gap between design and development. Not only that, but it's an amazing tool for building prototypes. Again, similar to XD, but with the ability to add so much more interactivity and functionality, almost to the point where you can go a little too crazy with it. You almost have to hold back a little bit, maybe sometimes. But I just kind of wing it. And as with pretty much all of my videos, I'm teaching on things that I am self-taught. So I may not explain things the way a properly educated person would, but that hasn't stopped me yet. So let's dive into this. I've got a blank file open here. It's a design file. There's a couple of different types files in Figma these days, but design is what we want for these this purpose. So I'm just going to kind of first give an overview of what we're looking at right now. Those of you who are familiar with other design products, like Adobe products or something, there's some similar features in here, but things are definitely laid out different, and there's some different terms to get used to. So hopefully this will be helpful for you as well. So we'll start with the left panel here. We've got our file name, which we'll go ahead and actually, well, I'll tell you, if you want to create a new file, it's as easy as clicking on the Figma icon here, going to File, New Design. So once you have that, if you click in here, we'll give it a name, just Figma tutorial. Okay. So there's two tabs here on this panel. The first one is the File tab, and within that, you've got your Pages area here and your Layers. Pages, we only have one page, which is this one here. And Layers, we don't have any items in the page yet, but once we do, they'll show up here. And they're similar to layers in other applications, but I would say they work a little bit differently, but in a good way. The other panel here is your assets panel, which we'll get into this a little deeper, but this is where your components and such are gonna live. For this tutorial, we're going to create our own components, but you do have the option of using pre-built libraries if that's your jam. We click back over to File. This middle area, as you would guess, is the content area, which has nothing in it yet. The right side, we've got two different tabs over here. The first one is Design. This is where all of your properties and things associated with whatever you were clicking on or whatever you have selected will live. So this will change depending on if you've got something selected. We don't have anything selected right now, so it's showing us properties involved in the page. So the first one is obviously just the color. So normally you would see, for most items you select, that is, you would see a bunch of properties to change. For the page, really, your only property is the color of the background here, which for most purposes you can probably leave as is, but depending on, let's say you're making an app and it's got a really dark color that's very similar to this, maybe you want to change this to add some contrast between your frames, or your quote artboards, which we'll get into that terminology situation there later. But yeah, so you can leave this be. Variables, super awesome feature of Figma that, as far as I know, last I checked, is not available in the Adobe products. This might be the thing that made me fall in love with Figma when I first opened it up. I was very attached to the Adobe ecosystem and very resistant of jumping into Figma, even though the Adobe alternative has died anyway, so there wasn't any other option, XD. But once I had to dive in, and I started getting into it and I found the variables, I fell in love. Clicking this will open up a dialog here. We do not have any variables defined. We'll go ahead and create one really quick just so you can see it. We'll make a color and we'll call it body text. Naming conventions are up to you or your team that you're working on. I'm not going to think too hard about it. I know people are going to have opinions, so I'm just laying it out there. But so let's assume for the moment that the thing we're going to create, which is going to be an app of some sort, I haven't figured it out yet, that it's going to have a light background. So if that was the case, then this variable is what I'm going to use to apply to most of the general text on the screen. So just for now, let's make this like a kind of dark gray, or basically black, but not. All right. So again, we'll use this, get into this later, but I wanted to show it to you. Close that. We have styles. Styles, if you're a designer, think of them as like character and paragraph styles within Illustrator, InDesign, and such. If you're a developer, think of these as CSS rules. So it allows us to predefine a bunch of settings to apply to an element. So like if I hit plus here, let's say we want to create a text style. You can name it. Let's say we're just going to make one for an example. Since I am a developer, I'm going to name it something that would translate really well for me. So I'll make this H1, and for the description, you don't have to add a description, but we will just for this heading level 1. So you can go in and select these font properties. Looks like you can get a little bit more detailed. But whatever you set here, if you were to apply this style to an element on the screen, specifically a text item, it will not only take on these values, but it will be bound to them. So if we decided later on down the road, we want our heading 1 font size to be slightly bigger, we can do it here and it will apply across the entire design wherever we have applied this or attached this style. So very powerful, great tool. Let's go ahead and I'm not going to think too hard about this. Just make this bold and create it. So you'll see that sitting here. If you wanted to edit it, you can click on the little faders icon here. Lastly, we have export, which this applies to whatever you have selected at the moment. Right now we have the page, so this would export the entire page, which could contain tons of stuff. Pages in Figma can get a little crazy. It's kind of the Wild West. There's no real rules to how you build these pages out, and it's hard to visualize what I'm talking about now, but we'll see it down the line here. But if I were to click on this, you'll see the preview is just a blank. But if we had items on here, it would show those. And you can choose a PNG and adjust the scale of it. Common options, JPEG, SVG, PDF, etc. So that's this tab. And again, once we start putting more items on our page, we'll be able to click on them and see a lot more properties. The second tab is prototype. There's not a whole lot to show here at the moment, but we'll dive more into this once we have a design. And again, this will show more options when we're clicking on different elements on the screen. But right now, this is the overall prototype settings, which really is just determining if you want this to be run. And when I say run, when you run the prototype, will it be on an iPhone or something like that? It'll do like a little virtual iPhone or Android. And again, I'll show that once we have something to show. And finally, down at the bottom, we have our toolbar. Some of these icons will be familiar if you're a designer. Some of them won't. So we've got our move tool. These are our basic move tools. I rarely use the hand or the scale. I tend to use mouse gestures to do those kind of things. Then your frame tool, and this is something that kind of deviates from the traditional design applications like Photoshop, Illustrator, and such. Frames are a very important concept in Figma. Frames can be many things. They're basically a blank, not a blank, they're a container that you put things in. So if you're a developer, think of it as kind of like a div, a generic div, and you're going to put other elements inside of it. Starting off, our first use of a frame will to be what you would traditionally know as an artboard in Adobe products. We would create a frame to put things in, and we'll even name it Artboard just so that it feels comfortable for those of you who are in that world. But again, dive into that a little bit later. This has other options. So section is a way to kind of organize your frames, kind of toss them in a bucket, so to speak. And I'll demonstrate that later. Slice, I've never actually used. I assume it's similar to what a slice is within the Adobe products. Then next we have our shape tools, just your basic shape options. Another cool thing about Figma is you can include videos, not just images. So you could have, maybe you could create maybe your app has like a video player built in. You could actually demonstrate that much better in your prototypes by being able to throw a real video in there and control it. Then you have your pen tool and pencil tool. Those work the same. Pen is going to draw lines and curves to create a shape. Pencil is going to be more freeform drawing, both vector. Then your text tool, that's self-explanatory. Comment tool, other great feature about Figma. I believe the Adobe products have kind of caught on and started adding some collaboration, but the last time I attempted to utilize it, it was very meh. The experience it felt clunky and unenjoyable enough that I didn't continue to use it. One of those options in Figma is the commenting, and the commenting is great because you can easily share your designs with either other designers to allow them to work on the file, or stakeholders who need to review and make comments about things. So what's also neat is that many times your stakeholders are only going to see the prototype. You don't want them actually playing around in your file because, again, I said they can be a kind of a mess and only something that you and other designers might understand, whereas the prototype is custom tailored to look like the thing you're building and function like that. But while they're going through the prototype, they can leave comments. Let's say they're on the dashboard of your app. They want to leave a comment. That comment will also show when you're in the edit view, like we are now, exactly where they were in the prototype. And I just find that amazingly powerful. I'll also add that the reason I think that their collaboration is light years ahead of Adobe, or at least where I last used it with Adobe, is you can work on a Figma document at the same time as somebody else, and it mimics it's the same experience you'd have with like a Google Doc. You're going to watch the edits happen. You're going to be able to see their cursor moving around while they're in here. In fact, I could actually demonstrate that really quick. I know I'm going on a tangent, but if I click on share, and I should be able to just copy the link, and I'm not going to show it, but on my other screen, I've got a browser open. I'm going to access the file in the browser, and you'll just see that I popped up here. There's two of me in here now, and there I am in the browser. doing stuff. So you're actually seeing me try to select something. And I don't know, that just makes me excited. I think it's super cool. I'm gonna go ahead and close that so I'm not in there twice. Okay, we'll end that squirrel moment. I've never used an annotation. Not quite sure how those differ from the comments. I think maybe these are internal only. I'll have to research that. Measurement, I've never used the tool, but now that I noticed it's there, I probably will, because that's pretty awesome. The last tool you have is the actions, which this is Figma's. They've been diving into AI within their app, and there's some pretty cool features in here. Last I opened this, there were a few that were in beta. So they yeah, you know, sometimes they're a little clunky, but I can see where they're heading, and it's pretty neat. And whereas I'm not the guy who would use AI in a design file to make my design. But this has one of the features it has, and I'll try and explain it really quick, but we won't be able to demonstrate it until later. You can have it automatically create more of the same thing with different details. Like let's say we have, well, we're going to make a to-do app because, you know, that's kind of the hello world of this era. And let's say we're designing the screen that shows all the tasks. We could make one example of what a task in the list would look like how it's styled and all that, duplicate it, and then ask Figma AI to generate new content. So it'll make it unique compared to the first one we made. That's super powerful already. But then on top of that, I can't remember what the tool is, or what the term they use for it is, but there becomes a little handle at the parent frame of the items you've created that you can click and drag, and it will automatically populate more copies with unique information. Again, I don't know if I'd explain that the best without the visual, but that has been really helpful for me when I'm working in Figma. Okay, so that is the overview, or at least all of the things I can think of. Let's go ahead and click back in design view on the right. And let's dig in and make something. Like I said, I'm going to try and make things comfortable for those that are familiar with the Adobe products, at least initially. So we'll create some things. We're going to create an artboard. So to do that, we're going to use a frame because there is no concept of artboards. So we'll click on the frame tool, or I believe it's the F key is the shortcut. And you'll see our options over here have changed. You can use one of these presets to create a frame that matches some of these, say, phones or a tablet, desktop, etc., which we may use later. But for now, we're just going to click and drag one on the screen here. And here we go. So we have this frame. And again, I said it's a container that we're going to put things in. You'll see it show up as a layer on the left. Let's go ahead and we'll double click on this, or you could do that on the left there in the layers panel, but we'll call this Artboard 1. So just think of this as your artboard if you're in an Adobe product. And right away now we can see that we've got all these new options showing up over here in the design panel. And again, these are going to match whatever you have selected at the moment. And we'll run through some of these. I'm going to leave out some of the advanced stuff when we do another pass. But here is the type of element. We can click on that, and really your only option is to convert it to a section. But we'll keep it as a frame for now. You've got some options here that we are going to touch on later. You've got your basic positioning options here. You can change its coordinates, where it lives on the page, rotate it, do a quick rotate or flip. Right now we're in what they call freeform mode. This frame is, which means you're not really bound to anything. You can do whatever you want kind of inside here, move things around. If you're a developer, think of it as being kind of the things inside of it are absolute positioned. But Figma has a super great feature called auto layout, which maybe that term makes sense for you guys, but for me, I don't know. It was messing with my head, but I finally got used to it. But to clear it up, if it's not obvious, like especially if you're a developer, think of it as your flex tools. Pretty much works just like that. But then also with the addition of allowing you to add padding and gaps. Well, gaps is part of flex, but it's super, super powerful. If you're not a developer, you might find auto layout to be something that you avoid if you haven't used it before. But you shouldn't. It's going to feel like it's taking some control from you. But once you start using it, especially when you're making things that's going to be handed off to a developer, you're going to find that this is an incredibly powerful tool that doesn't actually limit you. It kind of superpowers what you're doing. So you're just gonna have to trust me on that for now. We'll dive into that in a second. So we've got appearance, which for this type of element, you've just got opacity, and you've got your border radius, corner border. I'm gonna use that probably interchangeable because I'm a developer, so I think of border radius. You can hide or show the element, which quite nicely is depicted over here on the left as well. So if you actually have some elements you've hidden temporarily or intentionally, you'll be able to see that they're there, that they exist, even though you can't visually see them. But let's turn that back on. You also have blend modes in here. I haven't used them very much, only because I haven't had a need to for the types of things I've been doing. But pretty sure those, yeah, pretty much what you'd expect from your Adobe products. So we'll keep that. Actually, we'll turn that off. Okay. So next is fill. And if it doesn't have a fill already, you can click add fill. This one does have a fill. It's white. So this is basically your background color of the frame. Now I will note when your color picker pops up, you have this tab called libraries next to custom. So custom is, I'm going to define it right here, and it's going to be specific to this element only on the page. But libraries allows you to take advantage of your variables that you've created. This is something, I don't know if it's new, but I had not noticed it until recently. I don't know why they're throwing in variables that we don't have included in this file, but ignore this down here. Eventually this will be populated with our variables. Again, we'll get into that later, but all you would need to do is just click on this right here, and it would apply it. And I'll show you how that's done when we actually have some text. So let's close that out. We'll get into some of these other pieces of this panel later. You have your stroke, which same as the fill. If there isn't one, you can click add. And you get your color picker here to pick the value of that stroke. And then you've got your common properties over here. I believe this is opacity. Yeah. You can show and hide the stroke. You can choose where it's positioned. We'll keep it at inside. You can change the thickness of it. And then you've got some even more options here with rounding the corners of things. What style, probably dashed, yeah. Not going to dive too deep into this. Then you have the ability to fine tune this. So this is applying to every side of the item, of the frame. But you can go in here and say, I just want top, just want bottom, just want left, just want right, or put custom and get all of those options. You can say, I want the radius, or sorry, the thickness to be 0 on the left, 0 on the right. And now we only have a border on the top and the bottom. So if we scroll down, we've got effects, which we'll add one. I'm pretty sure, I don't use these very often. I probably should, but things like drop shadow and such. We'll pick that, drop shadow. Yeah. So you can add one, and if you click on this, you can adjust the properties. I'll say one gripe I have about Figma, their interface, their placement of properties and things like that can sometimes be inconsistent, but I like it enough that I'm not going to care. But yeah, to get to the properties that's on the left here, I would have expected maybe some faders like the stroke and wherever you see it other places. But okay, scroll down. Layout guide, we're not going to get into that, but that's the ability to add some guides for laying things out like grids or columns, or just kind of like an overlay. And then export. So like I had said earlier, this applies to whatever you have selected and everything within it. So right now we don't have anything in this frame, just the frame itself. So our export preview would just be our box with the lines, the border on the top and the bottom. So if I click off of this, we're back to the page properties. Click back on it. We're adjusting the frame. Okay. Let's put some things in this frame. First, let's click on it. I'm going to get rid of our stroke. And let's just put, I want to put a box in here, but I'm not going to use the shape tool. And I would explain that right now, but I don't want to. It's a concept you'll start getting used to, but we're going to put another frame in here and give that a background so it looks like a box. Again, if you're a developer, I feel like this would be second nature because you've got a div called your artboard, and then you're going to create a div inside of it and give it a background color and maybe some properties. So think of it that way if you're a developer. We'll click on the frame tool and we'll just drag a box in here. And while it's selected, let's go to the properties here and we'll give it a fill and we'll just make it like a light red something just so we can see it. Okay, with that selected, you can see we can move it independently throughout the frame. Figma has some great guides. At least what Adobe products have, but as far as I know, more. So we can see the, if we hold down the Option key or Alt if you're on a PC, you can see the spacing between it and its parent, which is super cool. And obviously positioning and snapping, which is awesome. So again, right now we're in freeform mode. Let's go ahead and let's make another one of these boxes. We could click the frame tool down here and draw another one, but I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate it and then adjust it because I wanted to at least have the same red background. So the easy way to duplicate it is Command D or Control D. Now we have two of them. Now they're on top of each other, and so we can't see them, but I've got frame, the second one, selected at the moment. If we click and drag, you'll see we've got the two of them. And just like you would expect layers to work, these are within that artboard. And we're in freeform mode, so they can go wherever you want. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the width of this one. We'll leave this one as is. Now I want to take this opportunity to show you auto layout. I'm going to click on the artboard and we're going to apply auto layout to this frame. So the way this works is you can apply auto layout to a frame, and then you can, if you need to, apply it to a frame within a frame, etc. But for right now, we're going to use it on the parent or the artboard. Now there's a shortcut for this that I'll probably use moving forward, and that's Shift A. But you can also come over here to your layout panel, and I believe it's this button. Yes, you can click this, which will convert it to auto layout. Or if you click these other options here, these are part of auto layout, that will automatically convert it to auto layout as well. So I'm just going to hit Shift A, and you will see that it adjusted the width, and that has to do with the properties that have now been applied in the auto layout. Sometimes this can be a little annoying when you're working on things because maybe you intended on that being a certain width and you need to make some adjustments to fix that, but it's something you'll get used to. But so now if we look at what we've got here, we've got our width and our height. our height. You'll notice that the height has a hug next to it. And what that means is it will automatically adjust the height to literally hug whatever is inside. So if we clicked on this box here and we made it bigger, our parent frame, our artboard, is going to adjust its height to match. Same here. If we make this one bigger, it's going to make it match. If we wanted it to be fixed and not adjust like that, then if we click on the artboard, we would switch this to fixed height, which you can do by clicking in here, or it would automatically do that if you manually change this 311 number. So if I do that, if I click on fixed height, you'll notice I have clip content here checked. So now if I make this box bigger, it's going to go off of the artboard frame and it's going to be hidden. And if I click on the artboard and turn off clip content, you'll see it there still. This clip content is very useful, especially in your prototypes. This will allow you to create a scrollable area on the screen, for instance. So if you're a developer, think your overflow X and Y property, setting it to scroll. Just turn that back on for now. Let's go ahead and change the height of this to be something else. Click back on your artboard so we have our auto layout options. Next to this, you have the lock aspect ratio, and this does as is expected. If we were to toggle this on, if we were to change the width or the height, the other would adjust accordingly. Next, we have our positioning tools. And before we play with these, let's take a look at the setting we have up here, which is we have this set to column. So if you're a developer, think flex direction column. You could switch this to horizontal, which we'll do that later. But for now, I wanted you to know that because that's going to affect the result of these here. So right now we're top left. If we were to do left, center, that's going to center everything and pin it to the left. Bottom, center, center, center top, right. And you'll notice that the only thing that's moving really, well, when we go left and right, is this little box because it has a fixed width, whereas this one has a different setting, I believe. And we're going to look at that and I'll explain that. But there you go. So as you would expect, let's go ahead and center it. The other important thing to note here then is this here. This is our gap. So when we hover over it, you'll see that area highlighted on the screen. This is our gap between the items within the auto layout. So we could say set this to 10 and there's only going to be 10 pixels between. Other cool feature, as I'm hovering over this, you'll see that it shows me the value while we're over here. And if I click on it, you'll see up even higher there. It gives me a dialog to go ahead and change it. If I change it to 20 and hit enter, that adjusts it. This is also a handle, so you can literally click and drag this to adjust it too. And let's go ahead and Control Z out of that change. As you may have noticed, when we did hover over this, you see the other lines on the left and right and top and bottom. This is our padding, which developers should be especially familiar with. And that is controlled down here. So this is our X or left and right. And this is our top, bottom, vertical, Y. And if you wanted to fine tune it, you can click on this button here and affect each side independently. And you may have noticed that some of the properties that I hover over have this this icon here, and this allows you to bind a variable to this item, or rather this property of this particular item. And we don't have any variables made yet that would apply to this. We don't have any numbers, but this is also super, super valuable. If you're a developer, you use something like Bootstrap or Tailwind or whatever. Think of this as applying like Sass variables to that, or CSS variables, so that you can make sure that these values are the same across the board. So for example, when we go back and look at variables and start creating some, one of the things we're going to create will be like a utility variable for spacing. And let's take Bootstrap, for instance. I think out the gate by default, it has 5 levels of spacing, 0 through 5. So like, and that applies to your margins, your paddings, and other things. So you could throw a class on an element of m-0, and that's going to be 0 padding. m-1 might be a different rem amount, at least if you're in Bootstrap. But for our purposes, we're using pixels. So let's say m-1 is 10 pixels, -2 is 20, and so on. This allows you to create those variables and then apply them to your elements on the screen. And then if you decide I want our, default padding around all of the app screens to be 10 pixels less than it was, all we have to do is change that variable value in one spot, and it'll affect all of the designs that have it attached to a property. Again, that's kind of a rabbit hole tangent I just went on. Let's go ahead and, while we have this selected, we'll look at switching to row, which is going to do what you think it would do. But first, I want to examine these two inner boxes and explain why they're behaving a certain way. So we click on this one, and you'll notice either right here, or if you look on the right, you've got fill attached to the width. So kind of opposite of hug, this will fill the available space on the x-axis because of the width. And that is why when we were adjusting the position within the auto layout, this one wasn't changing when we switch from left to right positioning, because it's going to fill the space no matter what. But this one, however, has a fixed width. And so when we change the position to the right, you saw this one scoot over. How I had mentioned that this is the opposite of hug, but what you will find is that it has the same effect as a hug to its parent element often, depending on the orientation of things, whether it's column or row. But so for instance, if we change the width of the artboard, this box will maintain its width. This one is going to adjust automatically. And if we set this one here to fill, this will also have that same behavior when we change the width of the artboard. All right, so now with the artboard selected, let's go ahead and change our orientation to horizontal. And you'll see something interesting happen. Our width changed for these items. And that is because both of them now have a width set to fill. And the behavior for that would be to equally fill the entire space. So these are going to be the same width because there's two items, and that means they get 50% of the available width, minus the gap and the padding on the right and the left. So if I were to say click on this one and I don't want it to be fill anymore, I switch to fixed. What should happen is if I shorten this, the width, if I make it smaller, you should see the box on the left get bigger because this is still set to fill. Or it'll get smaller if I get too big because again, it's just filling whatever space is left. And let's go ahead, demonstrate something else here with that. Because this is fixed and this is fill, if we were to duplicate this item, two things are going to happen. This box and its duplicate are going to be cut in half as far as the width. And you're going to see them automatically set horizontal because we're within an auto layout. Again, if you're a developer, think flex, set to row. So if we do Command D, there you go. So it's set next to it and it cut it in half because now it has to share that available space with this item. And if we make this one smaller, those will expand automatically. And if we make this bigger again, if we decide we want these all to be equal width, we can set this one to fill again, and it's going to match. Now that fill also works for height. So we could go over here to the height and fill container. And if we wanted to do that to these two, we could click on this one, hold down Shift, select these both. Actually, before we do that, another option, which sometimes is really handy. You'll notice odds are you're going to have a lot of frames nested within frames within frames. And double clicking into them to get to a very deeply nested item, even though you can see it on the screen, sometimes it might be easier to come over here to the left and just find it and select it. But the shift options also work over here. So if we click on frame 3, hold down Shift, click frame 1, and go over here to height, change it to fill. Now those are full. So now with these having width and height set to fill, if we change the orientation of the auto layout back to vertical so that they're columns, I think you can guess what's going to happen, but the width is going to fill and the height is going to distribute equally. So basically be this rotated. So if we click vertical, boom. With these other items, actually, let's go ahead and we'll click on this here and Command D to get a fourth one. Let's click on the Artboard and let's adjust the gap so you can see how powerful this gap is. Change to 50. So this is really, really great for getting an equal width, equal distance between items within an auto layout. Super cool. Let's go over here and let's make our padding 30 and 30. Actually, we'll do 20, 20. So all of our spaces are equal. There's not necessarily a reason for that, but for some reason, that's what I wanted to see. You're going to use auto layout a lot once you start getting used to it, but it's important to be able to identify what is an auto layout and what isn't, and they make that easy by the different icons. So when you have this icon, that tells you that frame is auto layout. When you have this kind of hashtag grid looking icon, that just means it's a frame without the auto layout. It's in free form. Right now, we have no need to turn these on auto layout because there is nothing within them. But let's say, let's click on this second frame. Well, frame 3 as far as the ordering here. Let's go to the fill and let's just make it a little bit different color red so we can identify it. Let's go ahead and put this frame inside of another frame. You could do that by clicking and dragging, and sometimes that's the best option, especially if the item is smaller than its parent. But it's possible that Figma may struggle because you're trying to put something in that's the same size, and I don't know, maybe I'm making that up, but if that's the case, another option is we can take frame 3 and drag it into frame 1, which then nests it. The behavior, though, is weird. You can see the very top of it here showing. And why that is that it is now within that container, and this container, this frame, has clip content checked. So if we uncheck that, you'll see it. But you only see part of it. Because of the order of the layering, this is technically above it in the Z position in 3D. So this frame here is going to cover it up. If we clicked on this frame and maybe change the opacity, now we'll see it showing through. Well, let's go ahead and undo that, Control Z. So with this, we're in freeform mode in the parent frame. So if we did move this up, we would see it still being clipped a little bit. But if we click on the parent, frame 1, Shift A, we turn on auto layout. Now auto layout's turned on, and it has taken it and it is positioned at top left. And because this was a copy of one of these, the inner frame had, actually I was going to say that it inherited that fill width and height, but I forgot that that's actually not how it works. It did when we copied it, but the moment we turned on auto layout, it removed the fill, but made it fixed to whatever the last value was of the fill. But if I actually went and changed this to fill, nothing changed, and I'll tell you why. If I change the height to fill, that changed. The reason why, if we click back on the parent frame, is that we have absolutely 0 padding. So if I change this to 10, you'll see that we get some spacing on the left and the right. Go ahead and change the other one to 10 as well. So then I'll actually click back on the parent. We are in column mode. Let's go ahead and click to horizontal. Click on that inner element again. And we're going to duplicate this a couple of times. So Command D. So I'm only doing this just to demonstrate really how you would use auto layout to do some things here now. So we have this nice column layout, and within each column, we are now able to create rows of things. If we wanted to, we could select this parent frame 1 here and duplicate. You'll see that behavior. I think I'm going to stop here with the auto layout. We will play with it more as we go along, but I want to move the next videos into a little less generic examples of items on the screen and make something that actually means something.